All right. Hello, everybody. You guys have joined us for assessment using Google Classroom presented by Chris Webb. I'm Emily Fitzpatrick, and I get the honor of introducing Chris Webb to you. I'm a math teacher from Southern Ontario. I'm also a Google education trainer, and I've presented at a few Google education summits, and I've had the chance to get to know Chris and get to know the amazing things that he's doing in the classroom, along with the cool things that he's able to do with Classroom, so Google Classroom, inside his own classroom. So Chris Webb is an itinerant teacher for technology, innovation, and math. He's also a Google education trainer, and he's got tons of tricks up his sleeves. He's also the GEG, so Google Education Group, for Montreal and Canada, a co-lead on that, as well as he's on the Remind Teacher Advisory Board member. So with honor, I pass it over to Chris to kind of give us some neat ideas and innovation on how to use assessment in classroom.
Thank you, Emily. So Emily will be back towards the end of our session to take any questions and answers that you may have. So please feel free to use the section below the video to ask those questions. And as we go through, Emily will be collating those, and then we'll come back towards the end to make sure that we try and address as many of those as we can. So we're going to look at Google Classroom, but before we do that, let's have a quick look at the learners that we're dealing with. So the spaces that we're teaching in are changing, and the way that we're teaching is changing, but the way that the students are learning is also changing. So, for example, this picture here shows a project that I was involved in a few weeks ago where students were creating a movie. So they'd written the scripts, they were directing, they were doing the filming, they were directing, and so on and so forth. So these students had used Google Drive to collaborate on the script. They'd used Google Classroom to collaborate on their different parts of their assignment. And they'd also submitted all of their work using Classroom. So we're also beginning to integrate technology more and more into our classrooms. And this integration of technology means that the space that we're using and the space that people are learning in is changing vastly. And that's what we're going to have a look at a little bit more today. So how can we take advantage of this changing learning space? How can we take advantage of these changing learners? And how can we begin to integrate some of this technology into our classroom in a way that doesn't take up a lot of our time, but also allows us to assess work in a way that allows our students to learn better? So most of what we're going to have a look at today is going to be based around Google Classroom. So we can access Classroom by going to classroom.google.com. And when you get there, you're going to be asked to sign in. Now, an important thing to note is that if we're using Google Classroom from a personal Gmail account, so that would be an account which ends in @gmail.com, you can't access Google Classroom. So you must be on a Google Apps for Education domain. So that would be one that would end in your school domain name. So, for example, mine is at lbpearson.ca. So if you're using a personal Gmail account, you can't access Classroom. So once you've accessed Classroom, you're going to be able to create some assignments. And the first thing that we're going to have a look at today is an assignment that I created using forms and a YouTube video. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and you are going to be able to see this assignment that I've created here. So I have two assignments, one of which we're going to have a look at a little later on. But to begin with, we're going to look at my assignment that I've created on Pythagoras. So my Pythagoras assignment is actually a form. So this is a Google form. It asks for your name, your class, your email address, And what it does is it goes through and we ask our students to watch a playlist on YouTube. So by asking them to view a playlist on YouTube, we can start to blend the learning between our classroom and between the homework side of assignments. So I put in 2 questions, and the form's going to get submitted. So to make this a little bit more interactive, what I've prepared is the opportunity for you to do this quiz. So I'm just going to flick back to the slide. So you can actually go to the link that's on the screen at the moment, and you can actually try and do this quiz. So what's going to happen is, as you complete this, and if you can't remember how to do Pythagoras, don't worry too much. It's more about the process of completing the quiz and filling in the answers than it is about getting the correct answer. So you could just pick some random answers. So what you're going to see is the power of what we can do with forms. So this isn't necessarily just a static form that takes some information, but it's more a way of being interactive with students. It's providing them with some relatively detailed feedback and some advice based on the answers that they put into the questions, and also prompting them on how they can follow up if they don't succeed. So I'll give you a few seconds to have a look at that and to complete that, and then I can show you the results page. Okay, so once you've completed that, then what I suggest you do is that you go and you view your email account that you put it in, and hopefully you will have in a few seconds an email that has been sent out, and that email will contain some information about how you're doing. So I can see now I've got 20, 21, 22 responses. So I'm going to continue, and I'm going to continue talking about how this is actually working. You can complete this in the background, and we'll carry on from this point. Okay. So I'm just going to, before I share this with you, I'm just going to hide the email addresses so you can't see other people's email addresses, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so we can see here that what I've got is I've got my form responses in a sheet. So my form responses are showing as a tab here. So my form responses always come into a tab in my spreadsheet. And then what I've got is I've got a sheet that is right or wrong. So this is actually taking the data and it's making it so that we know which question that student got right and which question that student got wrong. Now, when you set this up yourself, you need to make sure that the first set of questions is the correct answer. And you can also see your class results. So we can see how many people got the first question right, how many people got the second question right, and if you have more than that, we can continue to see how many questions they got right as well. We can also see which students get which questions wrong. And this is where the clever stuff happens. So what we're going to see is that we set up our topics, and we set up how many questions there are for each topic. Now, the important thing is to make sure that your questions are in the order of the topic. So for example, if I have 3 questions on understanding Pythagoras, I need to make sure that my first 3 questions are that topic. And then I put in this in cell D7 here, I put that I had 3 questions. So question 1, 2, and 3 are about understanding Pythagoras. Using Pythagoras, if I had another 3 questions, that would be questions 4, 5, and 6. So they would go there. And then I can have another 2 topics. So this supports 4 topics. I can provide specific feedback for each topic, and I can also prompt a question to be asked for each of these topics. I can pick to choose a generic feedback. I'm not using that because this says no here. And I can also choose a grading criteria. So if you use letter-based grades, then this will be useful to you. So I know that around the States and in parts of Canada, and also in the UK, the letter-based grades are pretty popular. So you can use these letter-based grades over here. Okay, so apparently you can see my screen. So here's my screen. So hopefully you could hear what I could say. So these are my topics here. So topic 1, understanding Pythagoras. Topic 2, using Pythagoras. And then I've got so these are where you set up your questions. So the number of questions go here, 1 question at the moment. So I could change this number. And as I said, the first 3, if you've got 3 questions on understanding Pythagoras, the first 3 questions need to be on that topic. Second topic, the next X number of questions need to be on that topic. And you could relate this to any subject area. So again, my specific feedback is over here, and my questions that I want to prompt students with are over here. My levels are over here, so my grades and my equivalent percentages, and also there's a load of other options as well. So hopefully what you've all found is that you've now got an email from me. So that's set up here in the response feedback. So in the response feedback, what you can do is you can see what is going to get put into that particular question. Now I can do the same over here in document and email configuration. Again, I'll hide this column. So this one. So you can see that we can create our documents and our emails, and we can also send out our new emails. So if you're going to use this add-on, and I'll talk a little bit more in a minute about how we get this add-on, we can create docs and emails, and then we click on this first, and then we send our new emails. So you'll see sometimes we get this error message that says account is not a Gmail account, or it hasn't been created. And what will happen is that if you don't enter an account, that it can't share that document that it's creating with. So you're going to get this error message that's set up. Okay. So to get how this add-on, it's called Super Quiz, and we go to Add-ons and Super Quiz. And we can see that in the Get Add-ons section, if you haven't used it before, we can search for Super Quiz. And it looks like this. So this was created by Ollie Trissel. Ollie Trissel presented earlier in the day. I watched some of his session. It was super interesting on some of the things that you can do with assessment in Google Docs and in Google Sheets. So we add the Super Quiz add-on, and then we simply go through and we set it up. So you go to a main menu, and we get a sidebar that appears, and you can do all sorts of things. So we can create charts, we can compare submissions, and so on and so forth. Okay, so if we go back, then how do we take this form that we've created and this assessment that we've got, and how do we share this with Google Classroom? Well, what I did was I created an assignment, and I pasted the link to the form. So when we go into this, because I own the form, it's going to get me to edit it. So it's going to ask me what is my name. It's going to ask me for my class. It's going to ask me to view the YouTube playlist. And then it's going to ask me for an answer and another answer. I submit my response. So once I've submitted my response, something that's important to remember is that with a form, actually what I need to do is I need to come back to here and I need to say that I completed this. So what I've done is I've set up a user here. So this user I've invited to my Education on Air class, and because I invited them, I'm getting a join button. So when I click on join, I'm now getting the opportunity to join this class. So because I've already completed the Pythagoras assignment, what I'm going to do is, because this was a form and I can't turn in a form, I'm going to mark this form as done. So I completed the quiz and submitted the form. So now, as the teacher, I can see that I now have one student who has done this and one who has not. So Emily didn't do her homework, which was she completed the other assignment. So we can see down here one is done and one is not done. So hopefully, while I'm doing the next section, she can do that, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if she gets the answers right. She should. She's a math teacher. So fingers crossed, Emily. So the next part of what we're going to look at is based on a project that I've created here on raccoons. So what I did was I set up this project based on raccoons. And when we view it, we can see here that our instructions were to carry out some research on raccoons. We need to find information out about their habitat, their diet, their size. And it should be completed as a Google Doc. So what we need to do is we can see here that there is a rubric that I've created. So let's just talk for a minute about rubrics. So rubrics are something which allow our students to understand what they need to do to succeed. And as well as understanding what they need to do to succeed, it allows them to see, once their work's been assessed, what they need to do to improve that work and how they could have improved that work to get a higher mark. So a lot of the things that we assign and a lot of the things we do, they don't necessarily have a rubric that come with them. But by using a rubric to mark, we allow our students to get higher grades. We allow our students to succeed in their work. But we also allow them to understand where their mark came from. So I'll share my screen back with you again, and you'll be able to see my rubric. Okay, so here's my rubric, and we can see that I have a section called Habitat, Diet, and Size, and I have 3 criteria: developing, meets, and exceeds. So we can also do this with a numerical scale across the top, so 3, 2, 1, or 1, 2, and 3, depending on how you want to set this up. So what I'm going to do is, Emily kindly submitted this for me earlier, but my other user here, Sam, he actually has done his work already, but he did it in a different way. So I'm going to show you what happens when Sam goes into the assignment. So Sam clicks on the assignment here, and I've got 2 options. I can either add a file or I can create a file. So this is one of the great things about Google Drive and Google Classroom, is that everything's contained. If I create a document, it's going to know what that document's called. It's going to name it for me. It puts the student's name in. In this situation, I've already created the document. So I'm going to add a file from my Google Drive. And my file here is called raccoons. So I'm going to add it. And then I'm going to turn in my assignment. So by turning in my assignment, I'm saying this assignment's completed. I want my teacher to mark it. So I've turned in my assignment. So if I go back to Google Classroom as a teacher, I can now see that 2 people have completed this assignment. I can see that Emily has completed her assignment and Sam has completed his assignment. So my next step here is to begin to assess this work. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new spreadsheet. And I'm going to call the spreadsheet marks for raccoon assignment. So first of all, I need to get an add-on. So I need to get 2 things. So I'm going to put both the names of these up on the screen for you. So we're going to use Doctopus, which is an add-on in Sheets, and we're going to use Goobric, which is an extension for Chrome. So Doctopus can be got from the add-ons menu in Sheets, and Goobric you need to get from the Chrome Web Store. So if you don't know how to get to the Chrome Web Store, you open a new tab in Chrome, and in the top left-hand corner there's a little button that says Apps. Click on that. Click on Chrome Web Store, and then once we've got to that window, we can then search for Goobric and install it. Now, what's going to happen once you've installed Goobric and Doctopus is the first thing you're going to notice is that you have this eye in your Omnibox here. The other thing is that once we've gone to add-ons, get add-on. Doctopus is in the shape of an octopus, and we add that. We can now see the Doctopus menu in add-ons. So we launch Doctopus. And one of the great things that Doctopus does for us, and this is a product that was created by Andrew Stillman, who works for the New Visions school district in New York, is that we can ingest a Google Classroom assignment. So this gives us a list of all our classes. So I choose Education on Air. And then I choose that I want to assess my project on raccoons. So it tells me that it's found turned in files and no files that have not yet been turned in. But I can tell it that I only want to ingest the files that have been turned in. In this case, I only have turned in files, so I'm just going to continue. So I ingest my assignments, and what this is going to do is this is going to go off, and it's going to find my students. It's going to give me their email address, and it's going to give me the information on their files, when they turned it in, when they edited it, and what they called their file. Now, before we discount this sidebar, we can see that at the top here we have an option that says Attach Goobric. And what we want to do is we want to attach a Goobric, and a Goobric is actually a rubric, which we find from Google Drive. Now, Andrew and his team kindly give you some example rubrics, but what we're going to do is we're actually going to add our raccoon rubric from Google Drive. So here is my raccoon rubric. I'm going to attach my rubric. And what we've now done is we've taken a rubric and we've attached it to this assignment. So I can also add a code teacher here. I can send feedback email to students. I can refresh it and look for new submissions. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to click on this link. And I'm going to look at Emily's beautiful assignment that she's created for me. And she even put in a picture that might get us some additional marks. And I'm going to click on the little eye. So what this is going to do is this is going to open as a new window. And you can see at the top of my screen that I've now got a window that has habitat, diet, and size. So habitat, diet, and size actually relate to these three titles that are down the left-hand side of my rubric. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a read through this. So I said that for habitat, information about where raccoons live is provided, but it lacks detail. So the habitat is deciduous and mixed forest. Raccoons were always from North America, but hang out in the woods and forests away from humans. So there's a lot of detail, including the regions, the areas that they like to live. So now I click on that section, and it tells me that Emily has exceeded what I expected for that section. I can now go to diet. So raccoons have always had teeth like humans. Their teeth are similar. They create very creative. They eat a lot of food that we would never dream of. They eat eggs, vegetables, birds, and squirrels. So the diet of the raccoon is detailed and correct. It also explains what their native foods are and the food that they scavenge. So again, she exceeded in that criteria. So I've seen baby raccoons that look like small kitties, and then large ones that look like oversized groundhogs. So we can see that I requested that the size was given as a numerical value. So the size was described as small, medium, and large, and no numerical value was given. So in this case, she's beginning to develop in this criteria. So up here in my comments box, I can type, Emily, I was looking for a numerical value for the size of the So I can also use this little box up here to actually record a voice comment or an audio comment, and that will get attached into my Google Doc so students can listen to your feedback. So if you've got students who are in the lower grades, so K1, 2, who aren't great readers, you can actually insert voice comments into your Google Doc and use a rubric to mark based on that. So two of the options down here is that I can also email my scores to Emily, and I can change my students from can view to can comment when I submit. Now, one of the things to remember is in Google Classroom, until I return the assignment, the student is still only able to view. So if I want them to be able to comment on the things that I've commented on, this box is super useful to allow them to change what they can do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click down here at the bottom of Emily's assignment, and I'm going to submit. Now what you can see is it's taken my rubric and it's copied my rubric into Emily's document. It's highlighted in gray the sections that I picked. So I picked exceeded, exceeded, and developing, and it's also included my comment. So I've assessed her work, and then I fed back a comment. Now, one of the things we can do is if we're using a numerical rubric, this information now gets fed back into our mark sheet. So here we can see the sections, so exceeded, developing, and my comment. So it's actually taken my feedback that I put into Goobric and got pasted into Emily's document, and it's actually recorded this in my spreadsheet for me. So I can now move on to my next assignment without leaving the Goobric window. So this is the assignment that was completed by Sam. So Sam said that they're a mammal which is native to North America. They originally lived on deciduous and mixed forests. So this was excellent. So again, I click on diet. So the information in the main is correct and has a lot of information. It's not overly detailed. And then for the size, there's numerical values given, but there's no information given regarding the genders. So again, up here I can type, you could have included more information about the size of the different raccoons and the more information about the diet, such as the items that they actually eat. So what happens is I can go down here and I can change my student this time to can comment. So I'm going to submit this. And what we're going to see is that this gets pasted in, and the same has happened with Emily's assignment. My comment is here. Now, if I go to Sam's view of this document, I can go to raccoons. I can actually make some suggested edits in this document. So because I've allowed Sam now to be a commenter, I can change this to suggested edits. And Sam can actually start to add in some things. So they eat a lot of rubbish in urban areas. They eat items such as eggs and squirrels and other small animals. The male raccoon is larger than the female by 1/3. I don't know whether this is true, I'm just making this up. So now Sam has gone through and he's added in his comments. So what Sam can do is he can actually wait for me to see those comments, and I will get an email to say that he's made those comments. Or once I return Sam's and Emily's assignments to them by going back to my Google Classroom window and clicking on Return, Sam now can edit his assignment. So Sam can actually now if Docs is going to cooperate. Sometimes it takes a little while for it to flow through. There we go. So now Sam can say that he's made those changes. And again, Sam can now turn in that assignment for a second time. So it's going to turn in the assignment. And then back in Google Classroom, what I'm going to be able to see is that Sam has resubmitted his work. Okay. So if we go back to our sheet, we can now see in here, if we look for new submissions, again, it takes a second. So it didn't find any new submissions. But by clicking on, we can now see that this document's not turned in. So as Sam, what I need to do is I need to go back to his raccoons document. So he has turned that in. And again, as I said, it does take a few minutes for things to flow through. So again, we'll look for new submissions. Okay. And when we go back into our document, we can see that the comments have gone. Now, one of the great things is we can actually click on our rubric. And when it loads, it tells us when we last submitted our marks. But it also allows us to see what we gave the last time around. So now the diet exceeds and the size exceeds. So I can submit this, and instead of it replacing the rubric, it simply pastes a new rubric. So we have a record of what our original assessment was, and then what our new assessment was. Then all we have to do is go back to Google Classroom, tick on Sam's mark, and then we can return that assignment. So that's how we can use Goobric and Doctopus to create assignments and assessments in Google Classroom. So it creates a workflow that allows us to collect student work, mark student work, provide them with rubrics, and then also for the students to resubmit their work to be improved. So personally, I think it's an amazing workflow solution, and it allows the students to see exactly what they need to do to improve. Okay, so Emily, hopefully we have some questions.
We do. The first question, and it was one of the popular ones, and I don't know the answer, but where can they find a recorded version of your video so they could follow through a little bit more?
So all the videos are going to be available after the end of today. They'll be available on the Education on Air site, so the site that you're viewing this on, and all of the review videos are going to be made available, including those from day 1 too. So hopefully that answers that question.
Awesome. Another question we had was, how do parents receive information if all the feedback is digital?
Okay, so there's a number of solutions to that. So one is that you encourage your students to show their parents their work and their feedback. The other one is that then as though you are able to edit the student's work once it's been turned in, you can actually share that piece of work with somebody else. So you're able to share that piece of work with parents. And if you're in a school that some schools I know give parents a Google Apps for Education account, so again, they could be invited to that piece of work and use that and to view it, and it could be shared with them.
Another question was, can Goobric be used for peer feedback?
Yes, so this was a question that I saw the other day, and the response is that yes, it can be. There's no reason why you can't use it with students, and students can't use it. So the only thing that you need to bear in mind is that they need to be able to access the Doctopus sheet, and that they need to have permissions to. So you add them as a co-teacher, and that it should work for them. So that's how you need to add the permissions in. You need to be careful about how you do that. That adding a co-teacher button allows them to access all of the students' assignments, which you might not want to do. Alternatively, you can use Doctopus to actually send out the assignment in the first place rather than using Classroom. So you can get students to send assignments to each other using Doctopus. So that's another way to do it. Actually, what I'll do is I'll try and find the post that was responded to that question that was asked on Google+, and I'll post it into the questions and answers at the bottom of the video.
Awesome. Going back to Super Quiz, a question came in asking, are there any ways notifications could be sent to the teacher when the quiz was done?
So in terms of when individual students complete the quiz, I don't believe that there is a way. You could use something like another add-on, for example, like Formule, to send you an email when the form is submitted. But if you're using it with a class of 30 students, you're going to receive 30 emails. The whole point with Super Quiz is that it's automated. If you're looking for something less automated, I'd recommend that you use something like Flubaroo. So Flubro is an add-on, and again, like Ollie Trussell, he covered Flubro in some detail in his session this morning, and it allows you to assess multiple choice questions. So it marks them right or wrong, and then you provide the feedback to the students based on that. So you trigger the emails and control what goes into those emails. So I hope that answers that question. If it doesn't, ask the question again, but in a different way.
Some people were also looking for the Super Quiz add-on and couldn't find it. Is that
okay? So yeah, okay, that's fine. So what I'll do, I'll screen share again, and okay. So you should be able to see my screen again. What I'll do is I'll go into an account that doesn't. So this account hasn't used Super Quiz. So what we do is we go to New and Sheets. And then we go to Add-ons and get an add-on. We look for Super Quiz. Bear in mind, we need to be in Sheets and not Docs. So Sheets is where we're going to find this add-on. The add-ons are application specific. So there are add-ons for Docs, there are add-ons for Sheets, and there are add-ons for Forms. And there's different add-ons available for each 3 products. So I click on the free button. I have to accept. If you don't accept, you don't get to use it. And now Super Quiz is installed. So I go to Add-ons and Super Quiz. And I go to the main menu. Now, one of the things to bear in mind is this takes a little while to get going. So when I click on Create Tabs down here at the bottom, what it's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to create multiple tabs in my sheet. So it goes off and it populates my my tabs along the bottom of my sheet here. So now it's getting set up. So what I need to do next is I need to go to Tools, Create a Form, and now I start to build up my form. So hopefully this is now going to take a while. I've asked it to do a lot, and I'm screen sharing. So hopefully that's good. That's going to answer that question. Okay, is there another question, Emily? Do you want to repeat that? You were muted.
Some of us did not receive an email. How would you troubleshoot through that as a teacher?
Okay, so as I went through that, I was suspicious that that may have occurred. I'd actually used this previously, and what I'd done, and you may come across this yourselves. So over here, what had happened was I don't think anybody received an email. So I am going to apologize now to those of you who are going to now receive 2 emails. So this is an apology in advance. So what I need to do is I need to remove these all the values from these 2 columns. And then all I do is I say send new emails. And what it's going to do is it's going to go through and it's going to run the same script that would have occurred when my form was originally submitted. So it will now go through and you can see that it's beginning to generate the emails and the docs for this. So if you come across the same issue, then this is how you fix it. So it's going to go through and it's going to send you out your doc. So, and for those of you who didn't get to see what the doc looked like, this is what it looks like without the, I'll fill these in for us in a second. And if you're getting the same thing that I just got there, I also know where that one is. Okay, so sometimes this occurs because you are getting information that doesn't exist, because what you need to do, first of all, is create the docs and emails. So you choose whether you're including the solutions or not including the solutions. So again, it's something that you have to play with. It's pretty complex. There's quite a lot that goes on. I'm going to refresh this and see if it works. Pick one that's getting sent out now. Okay, maybe I broke it. If you start from scratch and you don't do what I did, which was use something that I'd previously used, you should be good and you shouldn't have these problems. So, but if you do, then you can reach out to me and I'll help you troubleshoot it. Okay, next question.
And I just received the email, so I think it's working now.
And can you access the? Can you see your feedback in yours?
It's thinking about it. We'll go on to the next question.
Okay, excellent.
So there was a question about Goobric and using different formats. Like if we had the rubric on different sheets within one Google Sheets document, can we do that, or does it have to be in that format that you showed us?
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
So can we create a rubric using different formats within Google Sheets, or does it have to be similar to what you showed us?
Okay, so in the session materials for this session, and I'll show you where to find those. Okay, so if you go to the Education on Air site, okay, so if we go to the Education on Air site and we click on Live Now, it's going to bring you to the agenda. So down here, you can see that we're currently live, assessment with Google Classroom. And here it says access session materials. So if you go to access session materials, it's going to take you to this doc. And there is a link to another doc. And when we click on that link to second doc, what you can see is down here, I've provided a link to a numerical and non-numerical rubric. So you can add as many categories along the side or along the top as you want, but it must follow one of those two formats. So you don't have a choice, it must follow one of those two formats. So I went to the Education on Air site. I went down to this session. I clicked on Access Session Materials, which took me to this document here. I then clicked on this link, which took me to this document. And using rubrics, it gives me an example of the non-numerical and the numerical rubric. So I hope that answers that question.
And the last question we had was, can students look at each other's work or just their own?
So in Google Classroom, the students can only see their own work. And you or whoever you co-opt as a teacher can see their work. So this is a new feature in Google Classroom that was introduced a few weeks ago. I'll just show it to you quickly. And what happens is I can actually add a co-teacher to my classroom. So in the About section over here, I can go to Invite a Teacher. So I'll just make sure that everybody can see the screen. Okay, so I go to Invite a Teacher. And what I can do is I can actually invite, so I can search for Emily. And so I've now invited Emily as a teacher. This means that Emily can now see everything that happens in this classroom. So Emily can access everything that I can access. She can assess the work as well along with me. So I've now got two people who can potentially access all of that work, and who, if I add them as a co-teacher on my Doctopus sheet, can also use Doctopus to answer those questions, to use the rubric and to assess the work. Okay, so that's the end of the questions, Emily. That's all of them?
That is, you answered all.
Excellent. So thank you very much for attending the session, and hopefully it was useful. If you want to connect with Emily or I, then you can reach out to either of us on Twitter. So you can follow me on Twitter here at Crippit, CRIPPIT. And you can follow Emily at UGDSB_misfits. So Emily is a math teacher. She regularly presents on the use of Google Forms and some of the add-ons in Sheets for use with math. So if you have any particular math-related questions, she's an expert. So I suggest you reach out. You can also continue to ask questions under the video, and we will respond to those questions as they come in, and you'll see that you get a typed response instead of a spoken response. So thank you so much for attending this Education on Air session. It's been a pleasure to present to you. And I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Emily for giving up part of her Saturday to be my moderator. And enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.